after coming off of 2 consecutive 7-6 seasons, my expectations for the Kentucky Wildcats are to get back to that point again. This is going to be another opportunity for Mark Stoops to prove himself as a coach that can do more with less. And by less, I mean, well, it's no secret that Kentucky is not bringing in the same guys that, Georgia's bringing in, LSU's bringing in, Alabama's bringing in. That's very, very obvious. Although Kentucky does have some transfers from some of those programs, and we'll get to that in a minute. But this is another opportunity for Mark Stoops to prove himself as a top-notch coach, which I do, as a matter of fact, think that he is. Devin Leary, Ray Davis gone off of this offense. You bring in offensive coordinator Bush Hamdan, and some of you guys, maybe if you're an NFL fan, you may remember Bush Hamdan coaching quarterbacks for the Atlanta Falcons a few years ago, but he's coached at Washington, the Huskies. Last year he was the offensive coordinator at Boise State. This guy has got a long career. He played football, actually, I think in 04 at Boise State. I think it was 04 to 08 is whenever he played, and immediately got into coaching after that. So this is a guy that's been all around the block, and I think Bush Hamdan is going to be a decent replacement. I don't think we know, systematically how it's all going to fit together with Kentucky, and the Kentucky Wildcats just started spring practice just a couple of days ago. So I think it's still kind of up in the air, even as far as like some of the positions, who's going to be playing where. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. But just from what we can tell right now, let's kind of just go through the Kentucky Wildcats and talk about offense, and then we'll kind of talk about defense just a little bit, and then we'll get to breaking down this schedule. But the Kentucky Wildcats, of course, bring in quarterback Brock Vandagriff from the University of Georgia. Brock Vandagriff was a local Athens, Georgia guy that sat on the bench a couple of years and learned a whole hell of a lot. Mark Stoops said in his press conference yesterday that, he may not have thrown a ton of passes at the University of Georgia, but by God, he learned a lot about football. And I think you come to expect that from Georgia football players whenever they leave a program like Georgia, or Alabama players when they leave a place like Alabama. Places of greatness like that, even whenever you're a backup, you're not even going to be a backup if you don't have the right discipline and work ethic. And Brock Vandagriff has all of that. And I also believe that he's got the tools that he needs to succeed on the field. I think he's going to be a nice fit for this offense. I'm curious how they fit his run game into this offense, though, Mason. That's what intrigues me, I think, more than anything. I don't think we know a ton about this offensive line yet. You had some pieces leaving. You had some pieces come back. You had some pieces come in from the transfer portal. And right now, without seeing anything, I can't really make sense of the offensive line. So I'm going to leave that for another day, okay? But just talking about some of the transfers that this team had brought in, guys that we do know something about, Chip Trayanum comes in from Ohio State, a running back. Any running back that leaves Ohio State, I'm not really questioning it right now.
Yeah.
Because that's probably the best running back room in the country, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's got to be. Wide receiver Raymond Cottrell from Texas A&M. This is a guy that was highly sought after coming out of high school. Had 1 catch last year for Texas A&M. We don't know what he can be. We know what the Top 24/7 website has had him ranked at and everything, and it was very high. Lots of people wanted this guy, but we don't know what he's going to do in college yet. Talked about Brock Vandagriff coming over from UGA, 4 or 5-star, depending on whatever recruiting service you're looking at. Don't know what he brings. But on the defensive side of the ball, you bring in a guy like Christian Story from Alabama, a guy that's going to be playing safety. He's going to be playing a lot of games, I think, for Kentucky this year, and a guy that I don't think we know a ton about, but we know where he comes from, and we know the recruiting chops that Alabama has and the eye for talent that they have as well. And I think that he's going to contribute. But probably my favorite transfer acquisition for the year was a guy by the name of Jamon Dumas Johnson, or Pop Johnson as they call him. This was the signal caller for the Georgia defense last year when he was healthy. And he suffered an injury the last few games of the year. A linebacker stepped in by the name of C.J. Allen for the University of Georgia. Georgia fans, if you know, you know. C.J. Allen is the truth. And Jamon Dumas Johnson decided to go to Kentucky, which I think was probably a smart move for him. You're not going to split reps with somebody your last year in college football. And I think Jamon Dumas Johnson went to a good spot for him. Now, with all that being said, I think the strength of this team is going to be these wide receivers, Mason. Dane Key, Barry and Brown. Okay. They're both returned 85 receptions, 1,100 yards between the two of them last year. And that's with Devin Leary at quarterback. I think Brock Vandagriff can straight up 100%, very first year in this offense, very first year at Kentucky, surpass what Devin Leary did last year. I thought that was it was just a bad season. I'm sorry. Maybe the hype train was just, he was way too hype for Devin Leary. I don't know. But it was not a good turnout for him. And somehow Kentucky still ended up beating Louisville at the end of the year and ended up 7-6. I mean, pretty impressive, really, if you think about it. Kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Mark Stoops and the coaching chops on that guy. But those wide receivers are going to be pretty good. That's going to help Brock Vandagriff out a lot. On the defensive side of the ball, almost all the cornerbacks that started last year are gone. So thanks, whoever just gave us that thumbs up. Appreciate it. Saw it on the screen there. But all the cornerbacks are gone, Mason. So with that being said, I think there's going to be a lot of question marks about the offensive and defensive line. I think is really, and that's so generic and cliche to say in the SEC, but it's going to come down to the lines of scrimmage. I trust Mark Stoops to have a good enough offensive line to be able to run the football. What is the defensive line going to be able to do? That's really, are they going to be able to anchor this defense? I don't know the answer to that question yet. What are your thoughts on Kentucky? And let's kind of look at this schedule and go over it real quick and kind of tell me what you think about that. And we'll talk about Ole Miss as well after that.
Yeah, so interesting point that you made about Raymond Cottrell. So he was also a Georgia commit for a long time. Came out of Crisp County, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there. Anyways, he was obviously a heralded recruit, a longtime Georgia commit, was like one of those guys that was out there recruiting for Georgia, kind of, flipped all out of nowhere, and it was between Florida State and Texas A&M, which that alone tells you this was NIL related, that it was between those two programs, that's why he left. But I say that to say he probably had a little bit of time with Brock Vandagriff already, right? And probably, spent some time and kind of has a little bit of, I don't want to say chemistry, but an understanding of who he is, and that they know each other, right? Both played in high school, in the same state and all, probably went to camps and circuits together as well. So maybe that helps him out in Vandagriff's eyes, and maybe he's going to be a prime target. I agree with you that the wide receivers are going to be a strength of this offense. I think that you've got to believe that you've got the right person at quarterback. A lot, as you said, is going to a lot of the weight is going to be put on this offensive line, because every other position group, I don't know about the depth, but every other position group is filled, at least for the starting, 11, right? Outside of the offensive line. So if this offensive line can perform, and Kentucky teams are known to be pretty physical, right? If they can perform, I think that this offense is going to be pretty dang elite. Same thing on the defensive side of the football. If the defensive line can step up, they can win some battles in the trenches, then they can be pretty good. They can be pretty good on defense. I'm not going to say that they'll be elite, but they can be pretty good. They've got some pieces where they need them. But last year, that was kind of what I saw, at least, is that they didn't have big physical grown men up front on defense, and they sure did not have any depth behind them to play and really hold up. and that was the difference between them probably winning 9 games and winning 7 games. So I'd like to see that change. I'm not sure. Once we get through spring practice, we'll follow back up on Kentucky and do a breakdown of them and what they have, the personnel, and things like that. But as of now, I think that that the trenches are going to be a weakness for them. Looking at their schedule, I am okay. The win loss is at 6.5, right? So I've got for sure wins. Week 1 against Ohio, against Vanderbilt, and then whoever that M is, maybe McNeese State. I'm not sure who that.
Yeah, I think it is McNeese. Yeah.
Okay. 4 for sure wins, right? And then I've got like 50-50, let's say roughly, with Carolina, Florida, Auburn, Louisville, and Tennessee. So I'm kind of like right there with the Vegas number, 6.5. So given what we know about the offense, I think I'm going to go over. I think they can get to 7. I think this is an improved team from last year. Last year they got 7 games. I'm not going to try to overcomplicate this and overthink this too much. I'm going to say over. I think they get to 7 this year. Once again, that's a typical Mark Stoops number, right?
Yeah.
And they could end up they could win 8 or 9 with this schedule, and it would be a really good year. 9-3, and they're borderline a playoff team at that point, right?
Yeah, that I mean,
if you win the right 9, I mean,
yeah,
if they could beat an Ole Miss, you know what I mean, and like that'd be a huge win that like they could win.
I'm looking at that Tennessee game.
Yeah, like you could lose to Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas, right? And still be one of those at-large teams. Louisville's going to be a pretty good team this year too. So maybe like that final game is one people are circling and saying, yeah, this one this one they got to win, and it could decide whether or not they go to the playoffs. So I'm not
Kentucky fans. If you're watching this, tell us how big a deal that Louisville game is. Or Louisville fans, if you're watching this, tell us in the comment section, because I remember that video from last year.
Yeah.
Buddy, there was some mad shit talking went on that video, bro. Like go back and look at it, folks. Those comments were brutal after that game. I'm talking about Kentucky fans stomping on the grave, son. It was something to behold as a college football fan. I think for Kentucky to do what they're saying that you think that they could do, which I think that's best case scenario.
Yeah.
Beat Louisville and beat Tennessee and beat everybody else you're supposed to. And bam, baby, you had one hell of a year. One hell of a year. That may be Murray State instead of McNeese. I don't know. I think it's Murray State maybe the more I look at it. But obviously the really tough games on the schedule are obvious. Georgia, Texas, going to be really, really, really tough to win those football games. I think we can pretty much count those as losses. We haven't talked about the Auburn game a ton, but I think Auburn's going to be better. I think Auburn's going to be a lot better in 24 than they were in 23. And with the secondary issues that there is, I think Auburn's going to show a huge jump in progress as far as throwing the football. I think that, and Kentucky wasn't that great anyway last year at defending the pass. And then on top of that, you take all their starters and a couple of their backups away. I think there's going to be an opportunity for teams to throw the ball on Kentucky. And I believe that works two ways, though, Mason. Teams that don't have that ability to throw the football, I think Kentucky's going to be able to lock you up because without you having the ability to do so, I think you're playing Kentucky, their style of football, and it's going to make it a lot tougher on yourself to go out and beat those guys. So the 6.5, I would bet 7 if I was going to bet it. I don't think I'm going to bet this total at this point unless it goes down from 6 or something, or it goes to 6 and I can get a push, which they usually don't do. I feel like that's a tough number to bet, but if you're just going based upon history the past couple of years, 7 wins each of the last 2 years, 7-6 being the final record, or 7-5 it says there. But I don't know. I don't know. So are you leaning the over on that one?
Yeah, if you could find like a prop bet of like them landing on 7, I'd like that would be. This is a team that I would want to bet to get 7 wins this year.
Yeah.
Like to land on 7 and not go over or under. I want to bet them to get 7 because I think that they have the potential, like I said, to get 9 wins, but they're gonna give up 2 somewhere, right? That like they're gonna lose a game that is gonna be close. I'm not gonna say that they shouldn't lose. That it's a 50-50 game. They've got freaking 6 of them on their schedule, pretty much, and they're probably going to lose at least 2 of them. So, anyways, I think that 7 is where they'll end up. So I would say over on this one.
Hey, and Kentucky fans, we thank you so much for watching, and we hope that you will subscribe to the channel. We do this all year round, talk college football. We'll be talking Kentucky football throughout the season, off season, all that good stuff. Be covering all the news, the happenings, the current events of the whole nationwide college football landscape. We will have our eye and finger on the pulse of that, and we hope that you will come and join us next week and every week after that to talk some college football. Would love to have you guys in.